We're proud to welcome you to the Exceptional Advisor podcast series, brought to you by the Investments and Wealth Institute. The goal of this series is to help you better serve your clients, differentiate yourself from the competition, and enhance your ability to communicate those differences. The Institute is a professional association, advanced education provider, and standards body for financial advisors, investment consultants, financial planners, and wealth managers who embrace excellence and ethics. Through our events, continuing education courses, and acclaimed certifications, which include the Certified Investment Management Analyst, Certified Private Wealth Advisor, and Retirement Management Advisor certifications, we deliver Ivy League and practical education for investment and wealth professionals. Hi, I'm your host, Bob Powell, the editor of the Institute's Retirement Management Journal and editor of the Street's Retirement Daily. In this episode of the Exceptional Advisor podcast series, my guest is Kate Healy, the Managing Director for Generation Next at TD Ameritrade Institutional. Welcome, Kate, to the podcast.
Thanks, Bob. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So before we get started with our podcast and my questions, for the benefit of those folks who may not be familiar with you and your work, however few that may be, do you mind just sharing a little bit about your background and your career and your current position?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the Managing Director of Generation Next at TD Ameritrade Institutional, and that's a fairly new position that we've had for the past 2 years or so. And I'm really focused on all about the next generation, and we'll talk a lot more about that during this podcast, I know. But it's really about bringing in and helping advisors understand what the next generation of clients and associates are going to be. I've been with TD Ameritrade for 11 years, ran marketing for much of that time, and we were always focused on next gen, but it was a side of the desk exercise. And so 2 years ago is when we really decided that we wanted to make sure advisors were taking it as seriously as we were, and so we created this position to showcase that at TD Ameritrade, this is how important we think it is, that we've got a position dedicated all around the next generation. We want advisors to really think ahead and start to focus on that as well. I've been in this industry for a couple of decades, let's just leave it at that. But really started out, I've been in, I would say, I tell folks I've been in every channel that we've got. I was on the insurance BD side, the wirehouse side, in BD, and moved into the RIA side when I got to TD Ameritrade 11 years ago. So I've got a lot of experience in different business models. Started out in finance, moved into marketing, and have done product and all of those different roles. All of the things which I say led me on the path to TD Ameritrade and the RIA channel back in 2008, right at the height of the fun times in this industry.
So that's a great overview, and obviously it's given you the background to do what you're doing today. And I guess that brings us to the nature of our discussion today is the things that you are doing today. What sort of give us a sense on our listeners why you're here with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I really try to help advisors understand the next generation. And I think it's important for me to talk about my definition of the next generation. It's why my title is Generation Next. I consider the next generation anyone who's not in this industry today. And so while it is millennials and Gen Z, it's also women, it's people of color, it's women returning to the workforce after raising a family, it's military returning to the workforce after serving their country, and it's career changers. So I really focus on bringing in a more diverse group of people. And the diversity is, again, as we talked, race and gender, but it's also diversity of career, diversity of thought, diversity of age and geography as well. Because we know that the coming wave of the country, the demographic shift is quite large and happening quickly. And so I spend a lot of time trying to educate advisors, but also, and I think we'll talk about this, doing some research around what are we seeing in this industry. So at TD Ameritrade, as I mentioned, we've been focused on this for over a decade. And so coming up at our Link conference this year will be the 11th year that we bring students who are in financial planning programs to our conference to meet and network with advisors and learn about the RIA profession. Last year, we had 63 students from 30 different universities in attendance. over the past decade, we've had close to 400 students that have attended our conference, and we pay their way. We also bring their program directors. So when you think about the power of having 30 program directors in a room, they get to network with each other and share best practices about how to make their programs stronger. So I think it's really important that we provide the industry that support to do that and to show advisors how important it is. Advisors have a great time meeting the students. We've seen, opportunities for advisors to hire interns, to hire full-time associates, and really just get to know that next generation and the capabilities and skill sets that they bring. We also have a scholarship and grant program. So each year we award 12 scholarships to students in financial planning programs. 2 of those scholarships are geared towards diversity students. And then we have a $25,000 grant for financial planning programs that are emerging, so they're new or just getting started. And then we have a $50,000 grant to established financial planning programs. In the last 5 years, 2 of our grants have gone to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, to really help strengthen their programs and do more to bring more diversity into this industry. And then we bring these scholarship and grant winners to the NASDAQ each summer, and we ring the closing bell, which is really an awesome experience. It gets them a little more exposure. We do some programming. We have some advisors come in and talk to the students about their career and a day in the life and things like that. But then they get this great opportunity to ring the closing bell and do all the things that happen in Times Square in New York City. And it really gives them a great taste for the industry and how helpful people are in this industry and giving back when they meet the advisors. So it's just a really great feel-good opportunity. But we also do a lot to help advisors themselves. So, one of the questions I tell folks, we've been talking about this for 11 years. And for the first 8 or 9 years, people would say to me, yeah, but Kate, why? Why does it matter? Why do I have to hire women or the next generation or diversity? How much does that matter? And in the past 18 months, I've seen a switch, which I love, is now they're asking me how to do it. And I think that's really important. And so we're really trying to help them be able to do all the things that we need them to do. So we've got a career portal, ranextgen.com, where advisors can post their entry-level and internship positions, and students can post their resumes, and they can find each other to look for summer or all year round internships for entry-level positions. We build out guidebooks to help advisors start and execute internship programs. I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but I think they're hugely important to expose the students and anyone else, really, even career changers, to what the industry is about. But we recognize in the independent channel, especially, firms may not have the structure that has an HR department or someone who's going to lead these kinds of programs. And so within our education center, we build out all of these programs. Obviously, the Investments in Wealth Institute understands how important education is, right? We've got to do all that we can to help advisors. I know you focus on the next gen as well in a big way with the Institute, and we're, doing the same thing from the TD Ameritrade perspective.
So I don't want to jump around, but I think one of the things that is on our topic list is this notion of why it's so important for Generation Next to become part of the financial planning investment advisory world, is that there's a generation of advisors that are nearing retirement, and that we need to replenish those folks to meet what seems to be a growing demand on the part of existing investors and clients, as well as a new generation of investors and clients.
Absolutely. So according to Cerulli, there's 100,000 advisors retiring over the next decade. So that's a huge number. We've got these great financial planning programs that are educating the next generation of students, but they're only graduating a few hundred students a year. So there's a big delta between 100,000 advisors and a couple hundred a year graduating. So we really need to expand our talent pool. But it's also important to think about the fact that there are many Americans who don't even realize that they could get financial advice. So while the folks that are retiring I think they're creating a gap in the people that already get financial planning. I think as we look forward, more people are going to realize the need for advice around their finances, and it's going to become even more important. So that shortage is going to be even larger. The Bureau of Labor Statistics considers financial planning one of the top growing jobs. It's absolutely a fantastic career, and we've just got to do a lot more around creating that awareness of that need. We also need to think about the demographic shift in this country by, depending on who you listen to, 2044, 2045, or 2050, we're a majority minority country, meaning that no one ethnicity is in the majority. So when we think about what financial planning looks like, we need to look like what the country is going to look like. So it's really important for us to be reaching out and bringing in different viewpoints to understand different cultural customs and the different ways that people need help and advice. We started to see a little bit of that with just the next generation, right? They have a challenge with student loan debt, whereas the boomers and Gen X are really thinking more about retirement debt. We need to make sure that we're focused on giving advice around the issues that are relatable to each demographic. And so that's changing a lot too. So we've really got to start to open up the tent to allow so many more people into this profession and introduce them to it, really. I often tell advisors when they're looking for talent, that's one of the first questions they ask me is like, can you find me a fill in the blank here? And sometimes I have to say to them, you've got to look outside the industry. You also have to look outside the financial planning programs. They're fantastic. They're just not graduating enough. To start to look at the people who want to be helpers. This is a helping profession. So if you go to schools and you look for people who are studying sociology or psychology to be social workers or teaching, those people make great financial advisors. They just don't know about the field. Once we start to explain it to them, then they get very interested. We can talk about that when we talk about the research that we've done. But there's a huge swath of people that don't know about financial planning. And so the more that we can do to educate them, we can help bring them in as the future generation of financial planners, but also raise the awareness level of financial planning as a tool that everyone can use in their life.
Now, you've seen some promising trends in that regard, right? That we've expanded, we've cast a wider net, and there's some movement there in terms of people coming into the profession that maybe historically haven't. Women, for instance, or African Americans, Latinos.
We're seeing some trends. We definitely have so much work to do, but what makes me excited is I see. I get exposed to a lot of the research and to just when I go to conferences, seeing the next generation themselves. They are also very much mobilized to help. So I think that there's a lot of great momentum. I do a lot of work with the CFP board as well around racial and gender diversity. So we've seen that the number of women CFPs hasn't increased. The percentage hasn't increased yet. The actual number of women who got their CFPs last year was the highest in the prior 3 years. So we're seeing more people get it. We're also seeing more men get their CFPs, and that's awesome because the more certifications and qualified people we have in this industry, that's better for the general public. We also saw that African American and Latinos were growing at a faster rate than other cohorts getting their CFP as well in the last year. So again, it's a very small number. 3.5% of CFPs are African American or Latino. So we have a lot of work to do there. But the fact that we're talking about it more and starting to create programs to help, I think that's definitely promising.
And you've done some research to assess and better understand the sustainability of the RIA industry and what it needs to do to grow.
Absolutely. So we just finished a very comprehensive 6-month research project where we talked to 2,000 people. And of those 2,000, there were 1,000 students. 500 of them were not in the finance major world, 500 career changers, and then a couple of hundred advisors and program directors to really understand why people what are their awareness, what's the familiarity around the RIA profession in general, but what's their sentiment and why they are or are not joining. And so one of the big things that we found, which is not different than a lot of the other research that's out there, but the awareness piece is very low. So if you're not already in this industry, you don't know it exists. We talk to career changers and students about their interest in becoming an RIA, and only about a third of students were interested once with their current awareness level of what a financial planner was doing. Once we talked them through what the job description was and what a day in the life could look like, that doubled. 2/3 were interested after learning more about that. The same happened with career changers. So we realized that we have this big awareness issue. And along with the awareness issue is people don't know about us, but then that people that do know a little bit about us have misperceptions about what this industry is all about. And that can be very challenging to us. So those misperceptions really prevent people from wanting to join. They think that it's all about, it's all about numbers and selling. And that obviously keeps them from wanting to come to this profession. Career changers are also worried about starting over and losing any kind of tenure that they've got. They're 41% of them are not interested in sales. And again, that's the perceptions that they have. And they're worried about an unsteady income because they think everything is commission based. So it's important for us to really get the word out about what this is. It's interesting. We heard those perceptions from the career changers and the students, and we asked advisors, what are the top 3 or 4 things that they're looking for when they're looking at candidates? And they said that 75% of them are looking for people who want to work with people. 71% are looking for self-confidence. They're looking for things like communication skills. Those are what they consider the most important skills. And if you think about that, I didn't hear selling or numbers anywhere in those top 3 things that employers are looking for. So yes, there is a numbers component and a selling component to most of life, quite frankly. But those are not the top skills. Those things can be learned. But advisors are really looking for those people who have the people skills. When you think about this profession, so much of it is around empathy and making connections with humans. When someone comes into your office and has gone through a situation or is about to go through a situation, whether it's a positive or an unhappy situation in their life, it's understanding the behaviors and their feelings before you get to the numbers piece. So we've got to do a lot more around changing those perceptions.
Yes, those perceptions have been around for a while, and I suspect this is a tall order, but and a challenge. But one of the things in terms of the ways that you're helping is there was an article in Investment News in 2016 that talked about the next generation of investors tending to prefer to work with advisors who are closer to their age, and I think the suggestion is that we need a new generation of advisors who can make closer connections with a new generation of investors. And I'm wondering, is there a way for advisors to go about doing that? Do they need, for instance, to go to career fairs at the local high school or at their local Rotary Club or at their local community college in order to recruit this next generation of advisors and maybe address these perceptions that are maybe persistent with some demographics, but maybe not entirely young folks who have not been exposed to this profession?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, we all have to take a role in this, into boosting the awareness of the profession, become an ambassador about what it is that you do, and help educate other people about that. And so it's so important to go out anytime you can speak to a Boys or Girls Club, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Junior Achievement. Go to your local high schools if they've got a career day. Even at the younger ages, you can show up for a career day for your kids or your nieces or nephews and talk about what it is that you do, and share with them, a day in the life. I think that's so important. It's also important to connect with your local universities and financial planning programs if you've got them in the area, to talk about and to help those programs. And we can talk a little bit more about that because I've got a ton to talk about there. But and definitely think about creating those internship programs, because we do need to raise this awareness. We do need to bring in the next generation. You're right. not only do people want to work with someone who is closer in age because they feel like they're going to understand their life stage, but we've seen advisory firms to do this successfully. It's also coming up with that team approach. So you've got the younger advisor and maybe the older advisor, because while the next generation wants to work with someone closer to their own age, they want someone who understands what their life situation is. They also want to see someone who's got a little bit of experience, who may have seen a couple of market gyrations throughout their career. So we've seen it's a very healthy mix to have a team approach, and that can be older and younger to help show the experience. It also works when you have a male and female advisor when you're working with couples, because you're going to each bring a different perspective to what that client behavior is like, and you'll be better able to serve those clients. And clients also like it because then they see that there's a succession plan in place, right? If something were to happen, or if an advisor was out for an extended period of time, there's someone else who can help them with that. So working with that team approach definitely helps. But to your point, I think absolutely everything you can do to introduce financial planning, go to the high schools. Financial literacy, we know, is a huge issue in this country. There are currently less than 20 states that mandate financial planning before high school graduation. It's not easy to do, but if you can go to your local school systems and offer to help with that, teachers aren't always qualified to teach these classes. And if there's a way that you can help, even again, if it's just career day, you're helping to raise awareness, but also raise the competency levels of the next generation around financial planning.
So when you think about recruiting this next generation into your practice, there are certain things that are important to them in their career. Typically, there's some common denominators?
Yeah, there's this misperception that, millennials job hop and they just want to get a trophy and get promoted and move on. And that's not really the case. They are, over 60% of millennials don't want to change jobs. They just want to know that there's a career path for them. And especially when we think of the independent space, again, with smaller firms, they don't always have that learning and development department that's going to showcase everything that they can do. And so it's important for advisors to think about showing the next generation that they're dedicated to creating a career for them. And so that can be, it's thinking about your hiring practices to bring in that next generation, but thinking about how you're showcasing how they will be developed. What does that career path look like? The CFP board, we just released a great career path guide that showcases 5 levels in the advisory career. And, starting at the associate planner level, what are the competencies that you need at that level to be competent at that level, and then also to get yourself to the next level? What's a day in a life look like? How long should it take you to get to that next level? It's so important for advisors to think about sharing those kinds of things with the next generation so they know there's a path forward. They don't need to get there the next day. They just want to know that they're going to have a path. And when you think about the path that they're on, also think about how you personally as the advisor can help develop them, whether that's mentoring them, definitely providing them opportunities. One of the things I think is fantastic is when advisors let the next generation of advisors sit in on client meetings. Even if in the beginning they're just listening, it's important for them to see that dynamic. There's so much experiential learning going on there by seeing how you deal with a client. And also think about what is the development budget for your firm. You should have a budget for each of your next generation advisors to do things like whether it's helping them study for certifications, through different associations, IWI, CFP, what are the different things that they want to learn? Also think about how do you help them grow by sending them to conferences. So whether it's a local conference, some kind of learning opportunity for them, you should be thinking about having a development budget that allows them to grow. When they see that, they're going to realize that you're committed to that next generation, and they're going to become more dedicated to your firm.
So are there some, from your perspective, some obstacles that the profession needs to overcome as they think about, sort of bringing in the next gen, bringing in diversity into their firm?
Yeah, I think one of our big challenges is that we are known as a a profession for older men, right? We all know the statistic that there's more CFPs over the age of 70 than under the age of 30. But we're starting to see that change. Through our FA Insights survey, we've noticed that the average age of an advisor has actually dropped below 50 for the first time. So the average age is 49. But I think that we realize that that misperception is out there. So firms need to do more to showcase that it's a place for all demographics. And so showcase, if you've got women in your firm, young people, diversity in your firm, showcase that diversity and let people know that you are committed to learning about the changing demographics of this country and learning about how you can better deal with clients. If you don't have a lot of diversity in your firm, think about ways that you can start to change that. It's sometimes hard, but going to the colleges and universities, the program directors in the financial planning programs are trying very hard to get more diversity into their programs, so that there is so look at when you're hiring the next generation and when you're hiring interns at bringing in more diversity there. You can also partner with different groups. There are many women's advisors, conferences that happen. It's okay for men to go to these. It's just talking about financial planning topics, but from the lens of a woman. So there's no reason that you can't go there and start to form relationships and meet people who might be different than yourself. So it is a challenge, but there's a lot that you can do think about creating diversity hiring programs. So you really focus on, you should talk to your firm about bringing in different people and think about how you as a hiring manager may be having your own unconscious biases. So some of the things that we talk about to advisors is when you're trying to hire people, look for potential, not always experience, because experience is going to knock out the people that haven't historically been in this profession. But we want to look for people who are going to bring the profession forward. It's also great to have a hiring panel. So have a couple of different people interview, because everyone's going to bring their own point of view into who you're bringing into the firm. And so that you can make sure that that can help take unconscious biases that each individual may have around different things. It kind of minimizes those. You should also think about having a hiring rubric. So asking the same type of questions of each candidate, really having a more formalized process so that you make sure that you are taking out those biases that you may have that you aren't sure that you have, to give a fair shot to everyone. Because again, we're really looking for potential. If we look for experience, we're going to be left out, because the people that have done this already aren't that next generation of more diversity that we're looking for.
I think in our topic outline, you talk about the notion of I'll start by saying it seems like this is not an insignificant amount of time and effort to introduce diversity hiring programs. In our topic outline, you talk about rewriting job descriptions and avoiding words that are gender coded, and really sort of examining the things that you do that may limit your diversity hiring because you describe something as competitive or dominating or whatever the must be. Can you talk a little bit about that and how?
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. Yeah, there are things that you can do differently, right? So taking a look at your job descriptions in the first place, right, to make sure there's not that gender bias. We know studies have shown that women typically don't apply for a job until it looks like they can fulfill 100% of the requirements in that job. Men are more willing to say, hey, I've got 60% of these requirements. I think I'm a good fit. So being more mindful of the words that you use and around whether it's a requirement or kind of a nice to have or things like that. So changing the language to be more appropriate for a larger swath of the demographics to look at. So words that are very competitive sometimes are keywords that may turn off certain demographics. So if it looks like it's all about winning and all about certain words that have more of a masculine tense to them, that may turn off women. Also talking about how you would work at the job, you want to make sure that you're not requiring experience that more diverse groups may not have had. So talking about bringing in a book of business or bringing over your contacts and networks. There are many folks who come from cultures or who have not had the background that other folks have had, where they may not be bringing in a group of people that they can start to prospect to right away. So making sure that people understand that, you know, hopefully you're paying it's a salary, it's not all of a commission business, so that people realize that they can come into this job and get developed, and it's not all about eating what they kill, as you know, the term goes from the commission perspective. Many people are also supporting their families, and those kinds of things turn them off. Also, when you're thinking of the military, right, there are many great aspects that folks who have been in the military bring to jobs, but they don't always line up with some of the job titles or descriptions or things that financial advisors would have. So being more lenient and adding language that says, you know, if you've been in the military, talk to us, because we realize that there may not be a one-to-one match on how we describe it as opposed to how you describe it, but we're certain that you're bringing a skill set that is something that we would like to explore. So being mindful of all of those different things. Also, if you can, when you're interviewing, you know, showcase the diversity that you've got in your firm already, so that everyone's not just interviewing with the same type of people. So I think there are absolutely a ton of things that you can think about just as you're into that recruiting phase where you're starting to attract people to your firm. Showcase the diversity, showcase how you're focused on next gen, whether it's, if you can showcase it from a diversity, gender, and racial perspective, that's awesome. It can also be from a point of view. It can be from the technology that you use. Really think about the things that are going to attract a wider swath of next generation talent.
And this is something that can be done regardless of the size of your practice, whether you're a solo practitioner looking to grow from one to many, or a firm of 12 people growing to 24, or 24 growing to 100, right? There may be differences in terms of the scale, but the intent is the same no matter how big or small your firm is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say for the smaller firms, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to your custodian or your broker dealer to ask for the help. You know, I know TD Ameritrade, we've got job descriptions, we've got career pathing, we've got all these tools that will help advisors with this. And you know, I know that the other custodians and broker dealers have similar things. But you know, you're not in this alone. There's a lot of work and research that has been put into this. And so ask your associations, you know, the Investments and Wealth Institute, ask them for assistance in helping you with this when you're the smaller firms.
So I'm looking at our topic list, and I know we jumped around a little bit, but are there some things here that we should address that we haven't?
I think that, you know, one of the things that I every time I speak, I ask for a show of hands on who has internship programs in their firm. And I tell people I'm going to continue to ask this question until 100% of the hands are raised. I think it's really important for advisory firms, no matter their size, to have intern programs. Whether it's just in the summer or all year long, it is the best way for you to showcase your firm to the next generation of talent. It's also the best way that we have to clear up the misperceptions that happen in our industry from people who see things like Wolf of Wall Street or see how we're portrayed in the media. When they work in your firm, they really get to see what it's like. And so it's not hard to create an internship program. It is a great opportunity for you as a hiring manager to also delegate this to someone in your firm and create a leadership and development track for your younger talent that's already in the firm. Charge someone in your firm with running the intern program. It gives you an opportunity to see how they are from a leadership perspective. It takes it off of your back. And every firm, no matter what size you are, has a bank of projects that they've kind of put on a shelf because they don't have a staff to do it. Well, guess what? Internships are a very cost-effective way to get things done. Whether you're changing your CRM system or you want to implement a new event strategy or things like that, there are a ton of things that interns can bring to the table. The interns that come out of the financial planning programs have a great technical knowledge set already just from their classes. So I think you'd be surprised when you bring them in to see how well established they already are in financial planning and how much they understand. I joke, one of the first times I hired an intern 8 years ago, We plotted out the whole summer for this intern, and he finished everything that we came up with in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So it was a little bit of a challenge of, now I've got to find more things for him to do, but I also saw the value in what he brought to the table. So there are a ton of projects that you can have them work on. And also think about how you are rotating them through your firm, right? They should have an experience where they get to taste a little bit of each of the different departments in your firm, or they get mentored by different people. So they're really seeing the full scope. We talk so much about bringing on the next generation of advisors, but the entire financial planning industry is growing in a huge way. And so there is actually a need for not just advisors, but operations managers, risk managers, marketing people, client service people. So giving people, more of a well-rounded view of your firm is also going to help create those career paths for all the other professional management jobs that you may have in your firm outside of just the advice roles. So I think internships are huge. And so I highly encourage every advisor to have a paid internship in their firm. They'll see the benefit of it after the first year. And once you do it once, it's really easy to do. It's that the initial setup might be a little painful, but once you do that, then you've just got a self-sustaining program. And again, you can delegate it to people in your firm that can really help run it. And then it's really important to work with the financial planning programs. If they're local, that's awesome. Get on campus, become a guest lecturer. If you can become an adjunct professor, that's awesome. We have a shortage of teaching talent for the financial planning programs. They're growing so quickly. But even if you can just get on campus to be a mentor, go there and buy a pizza lunch, get to know the students and let them get to know you and your profession. The programs themselves are all of the size where every program director knows every student personally. So it's a great way to build those relationships and build that pipeline of talent. Every program has recruiting days, usually once a semester, where you can go in and go to a job fair and get to know the students and talk to them and hire that next generation talent. It's getting very competitive in our industry. Again, we're not graduating enough talent, and so everyone is trying to hire them. I talk to advisors and say, if you don't have a relationship with a financial planning program now, at best you're looking at recruiting a sophomore for your internship, because the juniors and seniors have already been recruited and they've been doing internships and they probably have job offers halfway through their junior year for the job that they're going to take upon graduation. So it's really important to get in there and start to create those pipelines of talent.
So talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the future of the advice profession, the value that advisors provide, the changing compensation models, AUM, commissions, fee and commission, et cetera. Do you have a point of view on that future and what it looks like?
Yeah, I think, the world is changing quite quickly, right? We've seen it with everything that's happened just in the past couple of months with the commission models with custodians and with the broker-dealers dropping trading fees to zero. That's how fast things can change. But it's imperative for advisors to make sure that they're getting paid for the value that they deliver. And when they continue to charge just based on AUM or just based on and talking about the investment management that they do, I think they shortchange themselves often around all the other things that they bring to the table. And you're having people focus just on the money. We talked about this, when we talk about bringing new people into this profession, we want them to realize that it's about people skills and having empathy and talking to people about their behaviors. There's so much more that an advisor brings than just the money management. And so I think when we look at how we are being compensated, it's important to think about charging for the advice or charging for the financial plan, not just charging for the investment management piece, because sometimes, especially with the next generation of clients who may be, the Henrys, what we call the high earners, not rich yet, the AUM model doesn't really resonate. They don't have the asset base, perhaps, that you could even charge and make money on, but they are looking for advice. The next generation is perfectly willing to pay for advice. So when you think of subscription models and the monthly fees and retainer models, the next generation needs advice on student loan debt. They're willing to pay to say, hey, can I call you and talk through how do I refinance my student loan debt? How do I balance saving for retirement with knowing I have to pay off these debts? And it's more than just the finance piece. They think of their advisor as someone who can help them in coaching conversations, negotiating skills. How do they negotiate with their employers? How do they look at their benefits packages and really optimize what they need from their employer in that perspective? They're asking questions like, I'm looking at a job offer that's a fantastic job and it's in Palo Alto, California, but I know that my quality of life might be different than if I took a job in Columbus, Ohio, because of how much it's going to cost me to live in one locale versus the other. So they're really being much more open about the kinds of advice that they're asking for. It doesn't always just relate to their investments themselves. And as they're growing their investments, for advisors to properly serve this market, they've got to think of a different business offering that's going to help them. And so thinking through, how do you charge then if you're just giving advice? Is it the financial planning, or is it more of that subscription perspective, or a retainer model, and thinking through all of those things? So I think it's imperative that advisors really think about looking at their whole offering, and they may have to bifurcate it between different demographics, and they may want to think about having a service offering that's more subscription-based for folks that they're just giving advice to, and maybe they're not managing assets yet. They'll probably eventually get there, but I think that we've all got to be more flexible and think about what the changing demographics are going to bring to us from a client perspective and how we're looking at our revenue streams going forward.
Well, it sounds like in one respect, a disruptive environment, but in another, the opportunity that it presents is also quite exciting. So,
absolutely.
So, one last question: in terms of the Investments in Wealth Institute, what role do you see the institute playing in helping advisors achieve some of the goals that may be aligned with what you're doing at TD Ameritrade?
Yeah, I think associations play such an important role. Investments in Wealth Institute does a great job of providing educational resources that I think advisors can take advantage of, but it's also a great opportunity for them to showcase as they're looking to hire that next generation, that they have the support there. I also think, Investments in Wealth Institute, I've been at some of your events where the Women in Wealth events, and so you're creating communities for more diversity within our industry. And I think that's important to form those support groups for people to get together, like-minded people or people who are looking to help increase the diversity in our profession, and get together and brainstorm ideas and ways. And what's great is the last event I was at, there were also a ton of allies there. So it wasn't just, while it's a Women in Wealth event, it wasn't just women at the event. It was a lot of men who were also looking to see what they could do to help create an environment that's more welcoming to more diversity within this industry. So I think, Investments in Wealth Institute is doing a great job of creating the education that we know we crave for that next generation, that's going to help to show them where their growth can be, but also then creating those communities to help us build a more welcoming environment to the future generations that are going to come into this profession.
Kate, I can't thank you enough for joining me on the podcast today. If there's anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to speak to it, by all means, you get the last word.
Well, thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it. And I think just my standard to tell advisors is to really get out there and talk about what it is that you do, and get on college campuses and get out to high schools and talk to people about coming into this profession. Once you talk to an advisor, they love their job. I always kid around that the reason that the average age is over 70 is because no one ever leaves. It's a job that you love and you can do forever. So share that with the next generation, share that with everyone you know, because I think that's going to be the best way for us to change those perceptions and bring more people into this profession.
Great. Thank you, Kate, for being part of the Exceptional Advisor podcast series.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe through iTunes, Spotify, or our website at www.investmentsandwealth.org/podcast to get the latest episodes of our Exceptional Advisor podcast series. The Investments and Wealth Institute has been helping investment and wealth professionals become exceptional advisors for over 30 years. Please visit our website at investmentsandwealth.org to learn more about our certifications, conferences, online learning, and continuing education programs.
Do you need to differentiate yourself from the pack? Look to the Institute's variety of educational offerings, especially when it comes to retirement topics. Clients of all ages are looking for expertise in retirement planning. As clients shift from an accumulation of assets to decumulation, their needs and their mindset changes significantly. An advisor can add more value by improving communication, trust, and investment outcomes. Learn all this and more by attending the Retirement Management Forum at the Diplomat Beach Resort in Hollywood, Florida, December 9th through 10th, 2019. Why not escape the winter weather and sharpen your skill set and expand your professional network? Please visit us on our website at investmentsandwealth.org/RMF to learn more about this conference, which is also the second step towards earning your RMA certification.